The doctor's office smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. "Have you abstained for 3 full days?" the doctor asked, his expression dead serious. "Absolutely," I said, full of confidence. "Not a minute less." Beside me, my stunning wife, Chloe, turned a shade of crimson I'd never seen before and mumbled, "Honey, it was yesterday." Amor would have been livelier than that room. The look the doctor gave me was a cocktail of pity and worldly understanding. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. Yesterday, I was asleep. It wasn't until she dragged me out of the clinic that I finally understood. The woman I'd married was a treasure, all right, a treasure who apparently had zero concept of a cool-down period. The chemical sting of disinfectant was still sharp in my nose. I, Leo Miller, was perched on the edge of a stiff, unforgiving chair in the exam room, my palms starting to sweat. Next to me sat my ridiculously beautiful, newlywed wife, Chloe. We were here for a preconception checkup. The doctor was a stern-looking guy in his 50s, with gold-rimmed glasses that made his eyes look like scanners sizing us up. He picked up my lab results, and his brow furrowed into a knot. "Leo Miller, is that right?" He tapped the paper. "These numbers, the count and the quality, they're not ideal." My stomach dropped. "And you're sure you followed the instructions?" 3 full days of abstinence, he asked, his gaze sharp and direct. I nodded so fast, I nearly gave myself whiplash. "Yes, sir. Absolutely. 3 whole days. Not a day more, not a day less. I'm a rule follower by nature. A doctor's order is practically gospel." The doctor then turned his laser beam focus on Chloe. "When, exactly, was the last time you were intimate?" I jumped in, my voice booming with a certainty I wanted to project. 4 days ago. Definitely more than 3. This was about the future of my lineage, for crying out loud. You think I messed that up? For the past 3 days, I had been living the life of a monk. But then my wife, Chloe, gave my sleeve a gentle tug. Her voice was barely a whisper, and her face was on fire. "Honey, it was yesterday." "What?" I almost launched myself out of the chair, convinced my ears were broken. "Yesterday? Chloe, you must be mistaken. It was 4 days ago." Chloe's head sank, so low her chin was practically touching her chest. "I'm sorry, Leo. You were sleeping so soundly. I couldn't help myself." Dead silence. I could actually hear the doctor sucking a breath. His complicated gaze darted between me and Chloe before finally landing on my face with an expression that screamed, "Look, kid, if you got a problem, just say so. Don't make your wife take the fall." I was dead in the water. There was no explaining my way out of this. The doctor cleared his throat twice, then pushed the lab report across the desk toward me. His tone was drenched in a knowing sympathy that made my skin crawl. "If you didn't strictly follow the abstinence period, these results are invalid. They're not a reliable baseline. You two can go home. Come back when you've met the requirements." I held that flimsy piece of paper, and it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My face was burning. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. The second we were out the door, I grabbed Chloe before she could make a run for it and pulled her into a quiet corner by the fire escape. The only light came from the eerie green glow of the emergency exit sign. "Chloe, Adams." I kept my voice low, but every word was ground out between my teeth. "You're going to explain this to me. Right now. Yesterday. What the hell happened? Why don't I remember a single thing?" This was terrifying. My wife had serviced herself while I was unconscious, and I slept through the whole thing? This was some kind of surrealist nightmare. She shrank back, blinking her big, watery eyes, trying to weaponize her cuteness to get out of it. "Leo, baby, don't be mad. Let me explain." "Explain?" "Oh, I want you to explain." I see that my chest tight with frustration. "Do you have any idea how hard these last 3 days have been for me? I was at the finish line, and you come along and stab me in the back. With this." Seeing that the cute act wasn't working, she looked down and started fiddling with her fingers, mumbling, You just looked so peaceful when you were sleeping. I couldn't resist. I just gave you a little kiss. And then what?" I demanded, a horrible suspicion dawning on me. "And then, we had a brief, but deep, exchange." Her voice got quieter with every word. "A deep exchange?" I was about to explode. "Ms. Adams, that wasn't an exchange. That was a unilateral sneak attack. That was attempted. No, that was a successful felony. I grab her by the shoulders, forcing her to look at me. Tell me the truth. How did you do it? Why didn't I feel anything? Her face was so red it looked painful. Her eyes darted everywhere, but at me. I might have put a little sleepy time lavender oil in the diffuser. So you were in a really deep sleep. And then I was just really gentle and quick. And then it was over. I was speechless. Good Lord, what kind of mythical creature had I married? She was drugging her own husband for sex? Seeing the dumbstruck horror on my face, Chloe immediately threw her arms around me, swaying back and forth. Leo, I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. I'll never do it again, I promise. It's just you're so irresistible, I lost control for a second. Look, the doctor said we have to redo the test anyway. Next time I'll be good. I swear. However long you want me to wait, I'll wait. Okay. She was cooing, her warm breath tickling my neck. The anger inside me deflated like a puncture balloon. What could I do? She was my wife. It was my job to spoil her, even when she was driving me insane. I let out a long, defeated sigh and ran my hand through her hair. What am I going to do with you? Chloe immediately seized the opportunity, standing on her toes to plant a loud kiss on my cheek, her smile blooming. I knew you weren't really mad. Let's go home. I'll make you your favorite pasta to make up for it. Watching her mood shift from guilty to giddy in a split second, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What a complete and utter mess. As I led Chloe out of the hospital, my mind drifted back to the first time I saw her. Back then, I was just another corporate drone getting hammered by clients day in and day out. I'd worked late one night and dragged my exhausted body into a 7-Eleven, planning to drown my sorrows in a craft beer. And there she was by the snack aisle. She was wearing a red sundress, with a figure that could stop traffic, standing on her tiptoes and straining to reach a bag of kettle chips on the highest shelf. After a few failed attempts, she stomped her foot in frustration, muttering something under her breath. She looked adorable and a little pathetic. On some strange impulse, I walked over and easily plucked the bag of chips from the shelf for her. Here you go. She turned around, and her eyes were sparkling like they were full of stars. Oh my God, thank you, she said, her voice bright and a little playful. In that moment, I felt something shift in my overworked, cynical heart. It wasn't until later that I found out she could have bought the entire shelf, the aisle, and the damn store. She was the only daughter of the guy who owned the whole convenience store chain, and she was just bored seeing how the other half lives. And I, the unsuspecting idiot, walked right into the trap she'd so casually laid. From meeting to marriage, it all happened at the speed of a rocket launch. She was a wildfire, passionate, direct, and completely uninhibited. She was unlike anyone I, a by-the-book kind of guy, had ever encountered. My friends all said I'd won the lottery, marrying a gorgeous, wealthy woman who had chased me. But only I knew the truth. Being with Chloe had completely upended my life. She was a constant source of wild ideas, dragging me into all sorts of new and exciting experiences. She was a force of nature, especially in our physical relationship, often so forward that my more reserved self could barely keep up. Uninhibited, that was the perfect word for her. Before, I'd considered a sweet kind of problem to have. But after today's disaster at the clinic, I was beginning to realize that her uninhibited nature could cause some serious trouble. Back home, I sat on the sofa, my face a mask of stern solemnity. Chloe sat opposite me like a chastened schoolgirl, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Chloe, I began, clearing my throat, trying to summon the authority of a husband. Today's incident was very serious. We need to treat this with the gravity it deserves. Right. Gravity, she said, nodding eagerly. This checkup is about the health of our future child. It's not a game. I tried to make my tone non-negotiable. So, before we go back to the clinic, we need to establish some new ground rules. Rules? Yes. Lay them on me. Honey, I'll follow anything you say, she said, her cooperation almost unnerving. I thought for a moment, then held up 3 fingers. First, and most importantly, during the abstinence period, we must maintain strict discipline. Especially you, Chloe. You need to control yourself. What happened last night, the ambush, can never, ever happen again. She shot her right hand up as if taking an oath. I swear, If I do it again, I'm a golden retriever. I nodded, satisfied, and moved on. Second, to help you with this. Austerity. We need to adjust the atmosphere at home. The sexy lingerie gets put away for now. And at night, we sleep under separate blankets. Maintain a safe distance. Her face fell a little, but she still agreed. Oh, okay. And third, I said, looking her right in the eye, we're getting serious about her health. Early to bed, early to rise. We'll work out together. I'll keep you accountable, and you'll do the same for me. No problem, she chirped. Then she leaned forward, her eyes wide. But, honey, during this period, hugs and kisses are still okay, right? Taking those away would just be cruel. Looking at that pathetic, pleading face, my resolve softened. Normal hugs and kisses are fine, but within reason. No crossing the line. Yay, you're the best. She cheered, launching herself at me for a massive hug. As I held her warm, soft body, I had a sinking feeling. These ground rules were probably going to be a bigger test for me than for her. The new era of abstinence officially began. Day one was peaceful. We had a healthy breakfast. I went to work. She went to her family's corporate office, though she mostly just messed around. That night, we watched an artsy foreign film. The mood was calm, and we slept soundly in our respective blanket burritos. Day two, the undercurrent started. As we were lying in bed, I could feel Chloe tossing and turning like a pancake on a griddle. After a few minutes, a restless little foot snuck out from her side of the bed and poked my calf. I went rigid, pretending to be asleep as I subtly moved my leg away. The foot paused, then undeterred slid back over. I moved again. We engaged in a silent, subterranean war of footsie under the covers. Finally, I'd had enough. I reached down, grabbed her offending foot, and whispered a stern warning. Ms. Adams, maintain discipline. She let out a little snort of laughter and finally behaved. Day three, the challenge escalated. I came out of the shower to find Chloe wandering around the living room, wearing one of my white button-down shirts and nothing else. Her long, 10 legs were on full display. The hem of the shirt just barely covered what needed to be covered, creating a look that was 1,000 times more seductive than any lingerie she owned. She was holding a glass of water, her head tilted, her eyes looking at me all soft and dewy. Thirsty, honey? I poured you some water. My throat went dry. I forced myself to look away, my voice cracking. Not thirsty. And you need to put some pants on. What is this? She pouted. There's no one else here. Why do I have to be so dressed up? It doesn't matter if no one's here. A rule is a rule. I practically fled back into the bedroom. She was doing this on purpose. She had to be. Lying in bed, my heart was hammering against my ribs. Chloe slid in beside me, her light, floral scent filling my senses. To her credit, she didn't try anything, but her quiet, fragrant presence was its own special kind of torture. I started chanting in my head, the doctor's instructions. For the baby. For the next generation. This was harder than studying for the SATs. Just as we were grimly enforcing our self-imposed sanctions, an unexpected visitor arrived. Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it and froze. Standing on our doorstep was Chad Peterson, my old college classmate and one of Chloe's most aggressive former suitors. He was dressed in a tailored suit, his hair slicked back with an alarming amount of product, and he was holding a gift box that screamed expensive. Leo, my man. Long time no see. Chad grinned, but his eyes slid right past me to Chloe inside. Heard you two tied the knot. Just thought I'd stop by. My internal alarm bells started blaring. This guy had pursued Chloe with a loud, obnoxious persistence that was legendary back in school. He wasn't here to be nice. Chad, what brings you to our neighborhood? I said, stepping aside to let him in, my tone flat. Chloe got up from the sofa, looking a little surprised. Chad, what are you doing here? Just wanted to see some old friends, he said, placing the box on the coffee table. It was full of giant, perfect-looking organic cherries. Chloe, I remember these were always your favorite. Chloe? Since when were they on a first-name basis? My jaw tightened. To her credit, Chloe was unfazed. Thanks, you shouldn't have. Leo, can you get Chad a glass of water? Simmering, I went to the kitchen. I could hear Chad laying it on thick, asking Chloe how she was, while dropping not-so-subtle hints about his new promotion, the condo he just bought downtown, and the new model of BMW he was driving. I came back with the water and deliberately sat down next to Chloe, draping my arm possessively around her waist. She must have sensed my mood because she gave my hand a little squeeze. After a few more minutes of small talk, Chad turned to me with a look of fake concern. So, Leo, I hear you're still at that little startup. How's that going? A lot of pressure? You should think about coming over to my firm. We're looking for a new project manager. The offer was a Trojan horse, stuffed with condescension and pity. I was about to tell him where he could stick his job offer when Chloe beat me to it. She smiled sweetly at him, but her words had an edge. That's so thoughtful of you, Chad. But Leo actually likes building things from the ground up. He's not like some people who just ride their dad's coattails. You take a step that big, you're liable to pull something. The smug look on Chad's face vanished. I could have cheered. My wife was a verbal assassin. After a few more awkward minutes, Chad couldn't take it anymore and made his excuses. The moment the door closed, I swept Chloe up in my arms and spun her around. That was amazing. You were incredible. She wrapped her arms around my neck, her chin held high. Of course, nobody messes with my husband. Looking into her shining eyes, I felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over me. The jealousy I'd felt moments before was gone. But Chad's little visit had done some damage. It was like he'd cracked the foundation of our carefully constructed fortress of abstinence. The air in the apartment suddenly felt charged with something restless and volatile. The aftershocks of Chad's visit hit that night. Maybe it was being provoked by him, or maybe we had just reached our breaking point. Whatever the reason, Chloe was extra clingy. After her shower, instead of keeping her distance, she attached herself to me like a koala, nuzzling her head into the crook of my neck. Leo, it's been 3 days. This is so hard. She whined, her voice soft and drowsy. And we still have a few more to go. My body went stiff. I fought to keep my sanity. Victory is within our grasp. Chloe, think of the baby. The baby, that's all you think about now, she grumbled, but her warm hand was already making its way under my pajama shirt. Don't you miss me at all? Her fingertips felt like they were sending electric shocks across my skin. My breathing hitched. The defensive walls I had so carefully maintained for days were starting to crumble under her deliberate assault. Chloe, stop. I grabbed her hand, my voice hoarse. I'm not doing anything, she whispered, tilting her head up. Her eyes were hazy, full of a heart-stopping allure, as she leaned in and kissed me. That kiss was the lit fuse. Abstinence, checkups, the 3 damn rules. Everything dissolved into a meaningless blur. To hell with discipline. To hell with the next generation. Right now, all I wanted was the woman in my arms. I flipped her onto her back, taking control, and kissed her with a desperate intensity that matched her own. It was a perfect storm of pent-up desire. We were seconds away from the point of no return when the last, flickering ember of my rational mind suddenly flared to life. No, you can't give up now. With every ounce of willpower I had, I pushed myself up off of her. I was panting, my eyes bloodshot, staring down at her. Chloe looked up at me, dazed and flushed. Leo, what's wrong? I squeezed my eyes shut, my voice a ragged groan. I can't. Chloe, we're 2 days away. Just 2 more days. With that, I scrambled off the bed and bolted into the bathroom, turning the shower on full blast cold, letting the icy water shock my system back to reality. This was inhuman torture. From outside the bathroom door, I heard Chloe's initial confusion turn into a low, suppressed giggle. That beautiful, infuriating woman. After that night's near-death experience, the last 2 days passed in a strange, quiet calm. It was as if Chloe finally understood how serious this was. She became a model of good behavior. No more teasing or testing me. We were like a pair of soldiers in a foxhole, offering each other words of encouragement as we counted down the hours to our second appointment. Sitting in that exam room again, I felt a surge of confidence. My posture was perfect. This time we had done it. 5 full days. Not a minute less. Let's see the doctor find a problem with that. The doctor studied the new report, his brow furrowed just as deeply as before. My heart started to pound again. It couldn't be. Not again. After a long moment, he put the paper down, looked at me, then at Chloe, his expression even more complicated than the last time. Mr. Miller, he began, choosing his words carefully. The results this time do indicate that you strictly adhered to the abstinence requirements. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Great. So we're good to go this time, right? But the doctor shook his head. From a timing perspective, yes. However, the single most terrifying word in any doctor's vocabulary. However what? Chloe and I asked in unison. The doctor pushed his glasses up his nose, his gaze finally settling on me. His voice was laced with sympathy and was that disbelief. However, based on your sperm motility and morphology. Mr. Miller, have you been under an unusual amount of stress lately? Or perhaps, are you feeling unwell in any way? Stress? No, not really, I said, completely baffled. And I feel great. Perfectly healthy. He sighed. That's what's so strange. In theory, after 5 days, your count and quality should be at their peak. But this report shows the motility is actually lower than last time, and the percentage of abnormal forms is higher. What? I shot to my feet, feeling the blood drain from my face. That's impossible. Are you sure you didn't mix up the samples? Chloe was just as frantic. Doctor, how could that be? We were so careful this time. The doctor held up his hands. The analysis is automated. The chance of error is extremely low. When we see results like this, it's typically due to prolonged, high levels of psychological stress in the male, or there could be another underlying health issue. I'd recommend you schedule a more comprehensive physical, Mr. Miller, just to rule things out. I collapsed back in the chair, my mind a complete blank. How could this happen? I was so disciplined. I had suffered through it all, and the result was even worse than before. An underlying health issue? But I've always been healthy. Unless a terrible thought wormed its way into my brain. What if there really was something wrong with me? What if I couldn't have kids? A tidal wave of shame and fear crashed over me. On the way home, I was a ghost. I didn't say a word. Chloe held my hand, her own face etched with worry. I slumped onto the sofa and covered my eyes with my arm, not wanting her to see how wrecked I was. It was over. If it was my fault, what did that mean for us? For our dream of having a family? Would she start to resent me? Just as I was sinking into a black hole of self-doubt, Chloe let out a little snort. A laugh. I dropped my arm and glared at her. How can you be laughing right now? She knelt in front of the sofa, her eyes crinkling at the corners, a strange, relieved expression on her face. Honey, I'm so sorry, but I think I know what happened. What happened? I sat up straight. A blush crept up her cheeks. She looked away, fidgeting. Well, after that first appointment, I may have secretly gone to see a naturopathic doctor. A naturopath? Why? Well, I felt terrible, thinking it was my fault for her. You know, the ambush, she mumbled. So I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help my own system. And while I was there, I asked if there were any natural ways to help. You know, boost your quality. A warmth spread through my chest, mixed with a dash of absurdity. Okay, and what does that have to do with this? She looked up, her eyes bright and almost giddy with a sense of reckless honesty. The doctor told me. She said that for some guys, abstaining for too long is actually a bad thing. It can cause the sperm to get old and lose their vitality. She said the sweet spot is usually 3 to 5 days. And for someone with your constitution, 3 days is probably perfect. 5 days was overkill. I just stared at her, my mouth hanging open. Is that a real thing? Yes. Chloe nodded emphatically, and she said stress is a huge factor, that you can't be tense about it. When we treated it like this big, stressful mission, our bodies reacted to that pressure. It totally messes with the quality. She was getting more and more animated. Think about it. The first time, yeah, I broke the rules, but you were totally relaxed. The second time, we treated it like we were preparing for a military operation. You were probably chanting abstinence, abstinence in your sleep. The pressure was insane. That plus waiting too long. It makes perfect sense the results were worse. My jaw was on the floor. So, after all that, it wasn't that there was something wrong with me. It was that we had been trying too hard, using the wrong strategy entirely. This was too much. This was absolutely, ridiculously insane. So, honey, Chloe said, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and hope. Maybe you're not the problem. Maybe my ambush actually produced a more accurate result. I looked into her big, beautiful eyes, and felt 100 different emotions at once. Was I angry? A little. She'd gone to a doctor behind my back. Was it funny? Unbelievably. The whole ordeal had been a complete farce. But mostly, what I felt was a profound, overwhelming sense of relief. I wasn't broken. It had all been one giant, beautiful misunderstanding. I let out a long, slow breath and pulled her up from the floor and into my arms, holding her tight. Chloe, you are. I started, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. All my feelings finally coalesced into a single, fond complaint. You are an absolute menace. She snuggled into my chest. I'm sorry, Leo. I was just trying to help. So, do we keep abstaining? I looked down at the woman in my arms, the woman who made me crazy and made me whole, and a slow grin spread across my face. Abstain? Are you kidding? Any more abstaining, and I really will have a problem. I scooped her up into my arms and started walking toward the bedroom. Leo, what are you doing? She squeaked, grabbing my neck. What am I doing? I raised an eyebrow. Conducting an experiment. It's time for a more scientific approach. From now on, we reject blind abstinence and embrace a program of regular, harmonious, and enthusiastic marital relations. Chloe's face turned bright red. She buried her head in my chest, her body shaking with silent, happy laughter. After the great preconception fiasco, our life finally fell back into a normal rhythm. We stopped treating procreation like a high-stakes project and just let things happen naturally. I quit my soul-crushing corporate job and went to work with Chloe, helping run her family's business. It was busy, but for the first time in years, I was relaxed. We still had our arguments, our disagreements, but they were always cushioned by a deep sense of understanding. I began to realize that Chloe's uninhibited nature wasn't just about her passion in the bedroom. It was her entire approach to life and love, direct, fiery, and full of vitality. When she wanted something, whether it was me or a new business venture, she went for it with everything she had. She was the kind of person who would call me out for working too late and then secretly book a flight for me to go visit my parents when she knew I was homesick. She was a ray of sunshine that had blasted its way into my orderly, slightly boring life, bringing chaos, yes, but also color. And slowly I was changing too, learning to be less rigid, learning to embrace the beautiful, passionate chaos she brought with her. A few months later, on a bright Tuesday morning, Chloe came bursting out of the bathroom, waving a plastic stick in her hand, her face a mask of ecstatic disbelief. Leo, it's 2 lines. There are 2 lines. I ran over and took the little test from her, my own hands shaking as I stared at the 2 clear, pink lines. We hugged, we jumped, we laughed like 2 little kids who had just been given the greatest gift in the universe. When we went back to the clinic for confirmation, the doctor smiled warmly at us. Everything looks great. You have a very healthy baby on the way. Walking out into the brilliant sunshine, I held Chloe's hand, feeling a sense of peace and happiness that was deeper than anything I had ever known. Well, babe, I said, turning to look at her, the light catching in her hair. Looks like our scientific approach paid off. She tilted her chin up proudly. Of course it did. You had the best project manager in the business. I laughed and pulled her closer. Maybe this is what the best kind of love is. It's not about rules or restraint or wild abandon. It's about finding a rhythm that works for you, somewhere in the messy, beautiful middle. She lights my fire, and I ground her storms. We break each other's rules, and, in doing so, build each other up. My beautiful, uninhibited wife. She taught me how to live and love with more honesty and more passion than I ever thought possible. And this was only the very beginning of our story.